in some cases the overstay, degenerate into something else.
Okay.
They have been able to maintain and they are focused. It doesn't mean it will be readily applicable in every aspect of the sphere of life. Now, having said this, what I'm trying to insinuate here is that yes, the Chinese might have a type of governance system that might have ensured stability and accelerated their development, but that obviously may not be accepted among the democratic ideals of those who have upheld the tenets of democracy.
Okay.
And all I'm saying is, even if you decide to have some amount of economic romance with China, you do not necessarily have to adapt their governance style, which is more of autocracy and dynasty.
Okay.
You can look at the economic aspect, where they are able to manufacture equipment and be able to improve on their goods and services and take it up from there. That would help us a great deal.
And finally on this bit, Dr. Walanya, before we look into the $50 billion dollar century bond, China is quite averse to corruption, and the price of corruption can be as high as capital punishment. Would you say there is something in there for Africa to learn, that the more you are anti-corruption or anti-corrupt, the better you will do domestically and even export the surplus you have to the rest of the world?
Yes, I think so, and I think Africa, our major problem continue to be corruption, and corruption can be narrowed down to greed, that is selfishness, and if you are not nationalistic in thinking or in planning, and at the end of the day, once that you have access to the country's resources, you think that you can take undue advantage and enrich yourself in the detriment of others. So you realize that for over the years we lack a development planning, a long-term development planning, and our planning continue to be a political manifesto, and I think that is the very big ground of corruption, because at the end of the day, the politician wants to implement what he thinks is necessary for him going to winning the next election, and they do all manner of things. So I think when you look at China very well, and when you study their governance system, what they are doing now is that they have long-term development plan, 50 years, 60 years. So it doesn't matter who is the president focuses on the long-term development plan. Now in Ghana we have NDPC, National Development Planning Commission, which even gave us the 40 years development plan, I think under Dr.
Nimoy
Thompson. I think the senior minister equally said that they are trying to break it into pieces, 10 years or 7 years or so. You see, when such things happen, sometimes it's a recipe for disaster. So that is where the political parties comes in, and they try to implement their selfish ideas. I'm not saying the current government is doing so, but I think that is a very high grounds for breeding corruption. And so if really we want to fight corruption, even we know very well that corruption is a canker, it's a menace, it's a sickness that we need to fight. But we need to put structures in place. Once these structures, organs and departments and agencies are working very well, then gradually we are fighting corruption.
Doc, His Excellency has this robust economic idea of making us keep paying to the rest of the world, or investors that will be interested in this grand economic scheme for a whole generation, a whole century. And this $50 billion bond, educate us, what is the need for Ghana? Aren't we mortgaging our future
country?
Yes.
Thank you very much. It's an interesting question. I realize there have been growing debates on this particular issue. I don't see it as an issue. Let me be emphatic here. The truth is that in the world of finance, in the financial market, in most cases, if an investor wants to lend money to you, in this case I'm talking about to a country, a company, the furthest the investor will be looking to go will be 5 years or 10 years. Should the investor decide to go beyond and think about or consider 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, all the way to 100 years. What it means is that this particular investor has growing confidence in your economy and believes strongly that the legacy, the economic measures that you have set out will make it easier for those generations to be able to pay the debt. And therefore, not every borrower, not every country can get the opportunity to get a century bond. Let me be clear here. Not every country will get the opportunity to get a century bond. It depends on the economic structures that the lender is convinced about and believes strongly that when the time comes due, the payment will be easier. Now, unfortunately for us, we live in a world that is relatively small, like a small village. Not even a global. When you say global village, it can be big. It's in a small village. When you enter, you're a stranger. People can easily tell because you don't belong. But now, with the click of a button, because of the advent of technology, people can sit thousands of miles away and be able to find out about your economic initiatives, your economic measures, and tell the direction in which you are going. One renewed measure that is helping this country has to do with the president's decision to revisit the ideals of the first president of the First Republic, that's the late Associate Dr. Kwame, when that has to do with the free education. You know, education is the pivot around which an economy is modeled. If you have decided to make secondary school education compulsory and free, of course, for everyone, the message you're sending out there is that very soon, in the next 10, 15, 20 years, you will have an average population that could read and write, which will make the dissemination of messages, information on development of the economy, the collection and payment of taxes very easier. And therefore, when it is time for repayment of debt, you wouldn't have to sweat to do as we're doing now. The Ghana Revenue Authority last year had to organize quite a number of conferences, symposia to educate people on the benefits of paying taxes. Why? Simply because we have a challenge when it comes to formal education. So the journey we are embarking on when it comes to
tax evasion could be an advertent way of fleecing the system.
That's what I'm saying. But tax evasion...
Nothing to do with reading and writing.
No. You see, there are two ways. There are some people who would love to pay, but they do not understand why they should pay it. Okay. That's different from those who are very crafty and want to evade.
Okay.
That is different. Yes. There are many people who do not even understand why they have to pay.
Okay.
But if they have the basic education, you realize there will be more people who would comply than those who would not conform to.
Okay.
So that is one aspect of it.
Okay.
Maybe for time you want to go, I'll come back to it.
Okay, thank you so much. Doc, when you bequeath an estate to your offspring, you want something quite reasonable. For a country whose debt stock is quite overwhelming, is $50 billion not too much?
Thank you very much. I think we even needed more than that, in the sense that when you look at our infrastructure deficits over the years, and I think we are lacking.
It's not like your economy is expansive enough. So the more facilities you put in, or the more office spaces you create, the more you expand as an economy. It is struggling.
Let me come before you continue.
So you think 50 billion is even not enough? We should even go for twice.
Yes. Because you realize that even when you look at the educational sector alone, because we are trying to be able to lay foundation for future generations. And even looking at the education sector alone, you realize that senior high schools are lacking a lot of facilities. And if we want to implement free senior high schools, then we should be able to provide enough facilities. For instance, the dormitories, we need classroom blocks, we need libraries, we need computer laboratories all across the country. And these are capital intensive. Now, we can equally, once that we say we are moving away from aid to trade, then we should be thinking about industrializing the country and be able to support one industry. It's not a 1 million Ghana cedi issue. So if really we want to industrialize, then we need such quantum of money. But then it must be put into proper use. If at the end of the day we don't have value for money, then it becomes a curse. But if it's being put into good use, then it's a blessing. So I think that going forward is just like two of us, we have a land. We have a parcel of land in Accra. And you are thinking that until you are able to mobilize, you work and mobilize funds yourself, you will not be able to put something on it. And I went to maybe a commercial bank and had a credit facility from there. And I was able to put up an accommodation facility, maybe a flat. And at the end of the day, I lease it out for 30 years. After 30 years, I'm rich. And after 30 years, you are still there with that same land.
So it is necessary for His Excellency to propose this bold step.
Exactly. It's a strategic planning and strategic thinking. So if you don't see it that way, at the end of the day, you will be thinking. One additional thing too is that you realize that as the years goes by, this money, quantum of money that you are saying 50 billion, continue
value.
Exactly, and it loses the face value. And even at the end of the 100 years, you as an individual, you can pay that money. Because the money that Dr. Kwame Nkrumah took in building the Akosombo Dam and others, today you alone, you can raise that money. So you see that as the years go by, it loses value. And even look at what happens in the ex-President Kufuor's time. At a time, I think the Western world realizes that, okay, you are trying to develop, and the only way we can help you is to write your debts off.
Okay.
And
Doc,
that is HIPIC.
We are beginning to wrap up, Doc. The only two other countries that have been this presumptuous have been Argentina and Mexico. But when you look back at how they have fared in the past half a decade or so, they have not done too well. So aren't we learning from a very wrong playbook, so to speak?
Thank you very much. We are not comparing ourselves to those two economies. We're looking higher than those economies. And you mentioned that we already burdened with some debt, and we want to add up to it. Our debt actually is nothing to write home about. If you are to compare with other economies, and as we speak, our debt is about 69.8%. And last year, the debt to GDP ratio is about 69.8%. But if you look at it, the first 10 highest debt to GDP ratios in the world, we do not come anywhere near. Japan leads with about 253%.
But see what Japan does.
That's where I'm coming. That's what we.
Ours goes to line the pockets of people.
That is the difference. That is the difference, and that is what we shine away from. That is the new paradigm. I'm happy you made the comparison. You look at Japan, 253%, nobody complains. Why? Because the funds are used for the purposes intended, and therefore they know no matter how long it tarries, they'll be able to repay. You look at Greece, 179%, Lebanon, 148%. You also count down Italy, 131.5%. You have our own Cape Verde, 129.2%. Portugal, 126.2%. You know, you have the likes of Mozambique, 120%, Congo Brazzaville, 117.7%, Jamaica, 122.2%, all of them. Singapore, 112%. When it comes to debt to GDP, it doesn't even end there. You look at Spain, 99%, France, 97%,
so it all
UK,
depends.
that is it, and Zimbabwe is even 77%. You come down to Mauritania, it's 78%.
Yeah, so it depends on what you use
the funds for. So it is not the quantum of debt, but the extent to which you apply the debt to the purpose intended. You know, and we have what we call the canons of good lending. Whenever you go to borrow from the World Bank, IMF, down to the various banks here, you have the canons of good lending. The first one is the purpose of the loan. You know, so you consider what the monies are intended for before they are released. And it tells us that over the years, our various governments have been able to provide very nice words on paper to attract the loan, but the utilization of the funds, you know, becomes very wanting. But that is what we shine away from. The current administration going forward, we are all witness to how the funds are being utilized, and therefore if we should even get the 50 billion, as I said, the future value may be different. If you are able to get it today, we will be able to apply it to so many projects, and believe you me, we may be able to even raise the money far before or earlier before the 100 years. And the remaining years may even be profitable to us as a country. A typical example, let me cite a common example. Just in his illustration, if you should realize that if you cite a hostel closer to university, you may be able to get students to patronize because accommodation is a challenge. You approach a bank, the bank awards the loan. If you apply the loan to the establishment of the hostel, you realize within 3-4 years you may be able to pay off the loan, and the subsequent years may come as well as a profit. You know,
His Excellency the President used this Chinese platform to unveil what he has on offer. But Doc, it doesn't mean we want all of the $50 billion from China. It was an opportunity for His Excellency to communicate to the rest of the international community. What countries do you think are allies to Ghana that can easily buy into this apart from China?
I think US is interested, and I think UK equally is interested.
No, the UK has become protectionist. It is, shrinking away from its global engagements and commitments. Hence Brexit. So even within its own ecosystem, it doesn't want to engage. And why would the UK be interested in a former colony?
From Brexit is coming to the Commonwealth.
Yes.
But so in the Commonwealth, Ghana is a member. So this is where Ghana's interest may be considered.
Okay. So you think the UK is a great economic partner?
Yes. And I think
potential.
Last week we had some India investors into the country, and we took them around. And I think India itself is interested in such issues, and going forward I think it's a brilliant opportunity for us, and we thank the President for marketing Ghana.
In closing, I think I'll take your final comments. Doc mentioned Dr. Nimoy Thompson in the 40-year development plan. It's been whittled down to 7 or 10 years or so. And do you
7
think,
years.
Yes. Do you think anybody would have the appetite to want to continue such a robust economic strategy that His Excellency is proposing 4 years down the line, or 8 years down the line, 6 years down the line?
It is 7 years down the line. As a matter of fact, I have been a proponent of the National Development Plan, so that I have talked about the need for us to uphold the principle of succession plan, which in a way buys into the National Development Plan. And what it basically means is that we should have a structure in place which will serve as a guide to succeeding government, so that we wouldn't always have to come and comb through our minds to determine what has to be done for the nation. If we are able to put it on paper, when you come, you will follow where there is the need for some amount of reform due to advent of modernization. You do that, but you realize integrally you have something to hinge onto, and it will make the development process a little bit easier for all of us. And so I am strongly in favor of the National Development Plan. That is one side. Now, when you narrow it down to the proposal, especially by the current president, of the 7-year, basically, if you look at the idea behind it, it is as if, well, within my tenure of office, I will be able to, I should be able to do it.
Is it about my tenure of office? Because good governance is a continuum. It's not about my tenure of office. It's about...
It's perhaps the choice of words, and it's also based on one common problem we're trying to resolve as a nation. That has to do with ideology. I have maintained that we must shy away from ideology to nationalism, because if you become centrism, upholds conservatism. But if you remain conservative, then it will be difficult for you to adapt into
sorry, I had to because in Ghana's development, it's about in our era, in this so-called regime, and in the US they don't talk that way.
Not
it's
at
about
all.
The United States of America.
Now we are shying away from that. As a matter of fact, the 7-year development plan is intended not for the NPP per se,
Thank you
but
so much.
as a national development that we could work.
Doc, your final comments. I wish we can do that under 30 seconds.
Yes, I think
how do we continue? How do we ensure sustainability of such a lofty
going
economy?
forward, looking at succession, we should embrace national policies, and we should do away with a partisan approach to national issues. And if issues like bond and others I think the experts who comment on it, they should try to educate rather than to politicize and condemn the whole issue.
Thank you so much. All too soon, we've come yet again to the end of another edition of the Issues. We had in the studios Dr. Ebenezer Ashley, an economist and a financial consultant. Doc, thank you once again for making time.
It is a pleasure.
And we also had Reverend Dr. Samuel Wolanyo Mensah, a chartered economist and a lecturer with Wisconsin University.
Thank you very much.
So much for making time. So we come your way next week with another edition. Stay blessed and keep watching GTV.
Country in sub-Saharan Africa to gain independence. Ghana, free forever.
Will be defined by integrity, sovereignty, a common ethos, discipline, and shared values, and beyond